Thank you for taking the time to go through the latest information on the Local Law 152 inspection and requirements. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'll try to give you a brief overview of the inspection requirements, what we are looking for on the inspection, and how to properly prepare, as well as some of the common problems associated with gas inspections and gas shutdowns. We'll go over items the building should have on site to make the inspections easier and also to help in the event of a gas shutdown. 2 quick seconds about us, why you need someone very familiar with gas and the inspection process, as well as the restoration process for when there is a problem with the gas in your building. I'm Kirk Sieber from Maxwell Plum Mechanical. We're a full-service plumbing, heating, cooling, fire sprinkler company that's been in business since 1989. We service thousands of buildings in the tri-state area and are fully versed in the gas inspection and shutdown and restoration process in the city of New York. My goal with this video and the subsequent inspections is to not only help you meet the city's requirements for the gas inspections, but also help you prepare and protect your gas piping to avoid lengthy and unneeded gas shutdowns. This can be done with a series of documents that you need to keep on site, with good planning, with proper supporting of the gas piping, proper labeling, coating and protecting the piping to avoid corrosion from humidity and water leaks in the area of the gas piping. Let's talk about how we got to this point. In 2014 and 2015, there were multiple gas explosions in the city of New York. When that happens, we have laws enacted to make gas piping and working on the gas piping system safer. A number of the local laws were put in place that are now required for any building that is above an R3 zoning. So most buildings above a 2-family are required to have this gas inspection and properly licensed people to work on the gas piping. What we're trying to help you avoid is a gas shutdown. This gas red tag is issued when there's a gas shutdown to the building and there's a gas smell or there's any kind of fire. And restoring that gas can be difficult for most buildings, even if you are really prepared for it. It's really important from the management or ownership side that there aren't any stop work orders or work without a permit listed on the building. And you see over here, stop work order exists on this property. This will take 2 to 3 weeks, and you'll have to pay the fines beforehand to be paid prior to the plumber even being able to pull a permit or start working. And you can check on those on the city's website, nyc.gov/biz, and by entering it, and you'll see down here it says violations DOB, violations ECB, and you can actually follow that through. And it's really important to stay on top of it, especially for co-ops and condos or areas where part of the building is owned by someone else. You know, maybe they own the stores and you own the residential, and the city looks at it as one complete building, so they can have these stop work orders on there, and you may not be able to pull a permit. Below that, we're going to look at the copy of the Local Law 152 that was enacted in 2016. And then we've also got one little thing, and I'll show you later as well, where you can email us, and what we'll send you is a link to the local law, the subchapter requirements, a link to find out what community board you're in, because it's listed by community board on when it's required to be done and how you can do it. We made a few forms to make it so you can list out what gas appliances you have there and info about each building and the dates when each of these community boards is due, and a copy of the GPS and GPS2 forms so you can see it and where they have to be sent. So this law was acted in 2016. It was supposed to start in 2019, but the city got a little bit delayed and they couldn't quite make it. So what is happening is it's a community board issued format, and it winds up that in 2020 we have districts 1, 3, and 10. 2021, before that, we have 2, 5, 7, 13, and 18, and that's in all 5 boroughs. So each one of these during that year, and then at least once every 4 years, you're going to have to do the test as well. So it kind of tells you who has to do the test, what the initial inspection is. The one thing that people have brought up, I have a new building, it doesn't have to be done. Well, in this purpose, for this, it's called a new building, means a building or any portion thereof that's approved for occupancy by December 31st, 2019. So unless it's after that, then you would have 10 years before you would have to do it. There's also some information on here on who has to do it and what our requirements are and what we're looking for and what we have to be schooled in to be able to do that. And that's all part of this local law. If you look further down in the law, it says that 60 days after we do the inspection, no later than 60 days, we have to give you that form, which will be the GPS1. and then within 60 days the actual owner has to forward those. So don't take the form that we send you and just put it in a file. You actually have to send it into the Department of Buildings. And the biggest thing is that they're looking for a civil penalty of $10,000 payable to the department if this isn't followed through. So tell a friend, because it's a big deal. So what really is this? This is a corrosion inspection. And we'll go through some of the things that we're looking for and how we can kind of give you some of the information so that it doesn't happen at the worst possible time. We really recommend that you do these things in the spring or the summer so that if there is a problem, we can take care of it quickly and it doesn't give you a shutdown in the building at the wrong time. We're really looking for inadequate or excess gas pressure, illegal piping connections, insufficient piping supports. We're looking for someone that might be stealing gas, gas pressure regulators that aren't vented, or the piping is bad going from there to the outside. Anything that's called an AOC, which is an abnormal operating condition. And we're looking for carbon monoxide as well. And much of the inspection is going to be kind of focused on corrosion, because that's really what happens is these pipes rot out, they get old, water, humidity. A lot of the buildings that have piping that's underneath a stairwell or underneath the sidewalk area. And we have 1 through 4 is what we're going to list it out as. And 1 is minimal, very little. As you can see on there, 2 is a low level of corrosion. Then we start getting up into 3 and 4. And that's where we're going to have to take pictures, document it, and level 4, they're even at the point where we have to check the wall loss and do a measurement on it. And these are some of the examples of that if you look below. And there's some field examples in there, photos, and we can give you a copy of that if you need it. But we've been to buildings where the corrosion level is pretty horrible, and it almost would require a shutdown immediately for that. And it's important to us that as we are conducting the inspection, we look at the entire gas system so that we can help you limit those shutdowns. Because if the gas utility comes in and they try to lock this off or shut it off, you're going to lose the building, and it will be down for a while. So even here you can see there's corrosion on the piping, on the risers, and getting leaks taken care of on the risers are a big deal. There's through the paint we have some corrosion coming through, so it becomes a big deal. We have a little riser example here. A lot of risers have an old T-handled valve, and what happens is if you want to limit the amount of shutdown to the building, you need to have the gas riser labeled, and you need to have this kind of valve on there that actually would be able to be locked off. Because then we'll just give an example. Say apartment 21 on this riser, it has an issue and there's a problem behind the stove, the gas flexi broke, somebody can't get in, the fire department or the Con Edison comes out there. If they have this kind of valve, most of the time they're going to wind up locking off the whole building. And that can be hundreds of apartments possibly in a larger building. Whereas if you had it where it's identified and labeled in the gas meter room and you could tell which one it is and you have that gas label on there, they could just put a lock on this one riser, saving an immense cost to the building and to the development. The other things we're looking for is fresh air into the gas meter room. So this right here actually is a little snorkel that almost looks like it's from a boat, and that would go down into the gas meter room and that would bring fresh air. So we're looking for properly supported gas meters and gas piping. It looks like this is supported, but ultimately when they come out and they remove the gas meter, they're shaking these lines. And if we can support it here and here, we can actually get it where it doesn't move and it doesn't cause additional leaks. And if the piping is labeled and identifying, it becomes huge, because there are plenty of times where we come out to a gas leak and someone may have cut a gas pipe or drilled into a gas pipe because that piping was not properly labeled. We also recommend that buildings have their own portable or permanent gas leak detectors. One that we recommend highly is the rigid one, because it goes down to 0 parts per million. It's real important that if a gas leak is detected, even small ones, that needs to be called into 911 or the utility immediately so that they can handle it. You can call us at the same time so we can kind of help mitigate some of the problems that occur with it, but you have to call them first. The reason we use this one, or we don't actually use this one, we use one that's a little bit more sophisticated, but this one goes down to 0 parts per million. And many of the testers only go down to 100 ppm. So you might smell a little gas and the super's looking for it, or the maintenance man is looking for it, but he doesn't know if there's any gas there. He wasn't sure what it was, but immediately upon finding that there is gas, and this one will tell you rather quickly. And this is the one that the utility uses, and that would go down to 0 ppm. The other thing we're looking for is illegal fittings. And you'll see here on a couple of circles that are there, there's dresser couplings on the piping, and that is not allowed. For a while, the gas company was installing them when they were putting the meters in, and these would actually have to be removed, or it will be considered an AOC. That would be a problem on these inspections. And over here and here, all of these would need to be removed from the piping. Any T's or valves or handles that are open, this would have to be taken care of as well. If you look at if you have 2 meters, like a twin set where they're both feeding the building, we might be able to repair this and replace that pipe one at a time without shutting down the building. But if you're in an instance like this, where this is the only one feeding the building, it'll require us shutting that off. And we're only really worried about the ones after the gas meter. Before the gas meter, the gas company uses that to stop the possibility of electricity going into the street that might be touching a pipe, so that they don't get any problems when they're working on the lines. So it's kind of a big deal for them. The other thing we're looking for that has been part of the problem with some of the explosions and stuff like that is called a future connection. So a T with a fitting like this that might have it where you can, somebody could go in and tie into that line and they would feed it, or on a hot water heater if there's one before the gas valve. These are considered future fittings that would have to be replaced and removed so that nobody could do it and nobody could get into there, and that becomes a big deal. If you look here, just identifying the piping, get it painted, get to make sure that it's protected so that nothing happens. So you see the rust that occurs on piping that is bare, and having it protected like that makes a big deal. And then also identifying it. You see this looks like a water valve. Somebody could go in here and shut it off. It's actually a gas valve. And without it being labeled, painted, and protected, you wouldn't know, and supported well so that you don't have any problems with the piping. There's 3 levels of corrosion that we're looking for. And as we're looking at that piping, it winds up that there's a 1, 2, a 3, and a 4, and that level 3 and 4 are the issue for us. A couple of more difficult gas inspections, shutdown and turn-ons, are really restaurants. And we're also looking at illegal tappings. So here's another one where we could support this and make it where if they're changing that meter, they don't cause a problem to the building. This was an illegal tapping where a restaurant actually tied into the main before the gas meter that's down here, and it caused a problem. And then the corrosion that's caused in some of these areas, or lack of supports, and this was shaking and it was ready to fall down. So these are some of the things that are real important to look at. Illegal fittings like this, we're not really mandated to go into apartments, so it's a big deal, that maybe you want to have somebody take a look at this, or we can look at it at another time, not actually during the inspection. If you have meters in showers, those are illegal. These types of fittings were not a legal gas connection, so that's a big deal. When we're painting the piping, we're telling everybody, make sure you get into the joints really well on these, because that's the weakest part of the joint. This was one of the problems that you see where this needs to be sealed coming from the outside so that you can't get any exterior gas coming into the building, which was the problem up on 125th Street. Here's a couple other points of where there's problems with the fittings or illegal tappings and things like that are in there. The other thing that we see as well is restaurants. There's very difficult if there's problems with restaurants. The restaurants a lot of times are using the gas flexis that are not permitted, and these would have to be, if it has legs, it must have hard piping all the way. This has to be accessible. That's your appliance valve. It cannot have it where anything in there that, if it has wheels, it can have a flexible connector, but it's got to be that commercial gas connector so that it can work on there. Otherwise and then also just making sure that you can shut things off and you can reach these, because there's plenty of times where there's a problem with an appliance and it can be a huge problem for you if you can't access that, and it cause a lot bigger fires and bigger problems for you. The other thing is rooftop grills. We're seeing a lot of those in the city. Everybody enjoys cooking outside. They're looking to make sure that there's 10 foot around the rooftop grill that's actually fireproof. They want to know that it's tied in with hard pipe. There's not flexis connected to them. There's supposed to be an emergency switch and a solenoid that would shut off all the gas going to it. And that piping really has to be protected and fireproofed. The other thing that's becoming a big problem in the city is laundry rooms. You're not allowed to have any band iron holding it together. You're not allowed to have screws inside of the flue piping. There can't be any flexible connectors going to it. It has to be hard piped, as you see on the diagram on the right. Above the dryers, you must have sprinklers and a way to know that it could put out a fire. It's one of the leading causes of fire that we have in the city, and it's one of those things that we want to make sure that it's taken care of and not a problem. So there's no gas allowed to those. Quick note for your contractors and your supers that are working in apartments with gas stoves. Anytime they're working on something like this, they're leaving it, they're changing cabinets, you got to make sure that this is capped off. If there's nothing leaking through, if the stove is removed, you need that cap on there. If there's anything inside the wall, this has to be fireproofed all the way around, and these gas appliance valves need to be able to be turned easily. Like you see on this one, you would need a wrench to close it. The code actually says that it has to be accessible and it has to be easily turned off and on. That becomes a problem with some of these newer stoves that you can't move. It may not be that the connection can be behind the stove anymore where the valve is. It might have to be somewhere else. And having these flexis, they can't go through any cabinets. We're recommending everybody that if it's possible, if there ever is a gas shutdown or a problem, that you have a lockable valve right off the riser so that you could relocate that in that apartment without having a problem. And we're not allowed to test against one of these older style valves, and you've got to have a different way if you're relocating that stove. So if you ever have any question about that, please give us a call and we can try to help you with it. Here's a copy of the form that you will get, and it has to be filled out 100%. And here's some of the AOCs that we're looking at, or abnormal operating conditions, improper use of flexis, illegal connections, gas leaks, worn parts, corrosion, unsafe conditions, and that would be certified and we would turn it into you. And then we'll also fill out this form for you, which is the GPS2, and it'll tell you who did the work, why we were there, and then within 120 days of that inspection, it has to be turned into the city of New York. And that would help so that you don't have any issues with it. I hope this helps. This is just the basic coverage of it. It's an initial look at what it's going to take to do these inspections and what we're looking for. If you email us at service@maxwellplum.com or you text us at this number, we can email you this full list, and that would give you that local law, the subchapter requirements, a link to find out what community board you're in, because a lot of times you can't find that. It's hard to find. It's not as easy to locate as some things, and those pre-made forms, and then also that date that you see down here, which says, hey, you know what, January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 is districts 1, 3, and 10, the 21, 22, 23, and then it'll start all over again, and this will be once basically on a 4-year cycle. I hope this had given you a little bit of information to help keep track of those inspections and the due dates, and that we can help you. And you can call us for your gas inspections and any plumbing, heating, cooling, and sprinkler that you may need. I thank you for taking the time, and hopefully this is helpful. Give us a call at the 279-4441 if you have any questions, or email us. Thank you very much.